sometimes I make these videos and I just, as I'm talking, I get more and more thoughts. And so that's why you see the same outfit over multiple weeks. So just so you know, these are all done back to back. I'm not like wearing the same clothes for 3 weeks in a row. Okay. I did something about this once before, but I'm just going to sort of share it again because I think it's relevant, or at least it's in my head. But I shared in the previous video that I think nearly every successful lead player, and when I say lead player, I'm really primarily talking like commercial lead player, like a big band lead player, someone maybe playing in like a horn band, something where you're playing lots of loud high notes kind of all night long. So I'd share that my opinion is that anyone who's doing that successfully, playing up to high G and above with a loud, free sound, and can do it all night for 2 or 3 hour gigs, that they have to be using some form of TCE. And I know that statement might be kind of controversial. And then the question will then kind of arise, well, like if a player was using the tongue-controlled embouchure, wouldn't they know it? Like, wouldn't they be able to tell us that's what they're doing? Wouldn't Wayne Bergeron be able to say that, like, yes, that he uses the Calit tongue-controlled embouchure as he plays in the upper register? Wouldn't John Faddis be able to say that, yes, this is what I do when I play in this register? Wouldn't Maynard be able to tell us that? Wouldn't you insert whoever trumpet hero you've got that's famous for that, be able to tell us? And my answer to that is probably not. In my experience, and have had the opportunity to take lessons with many of the people that I just mentioned, or have listened to them speak about playing the trumpet and their thoughts on playing the trumpet. And really, with no exception, all those people were kind, generous, eager to help. I think of all the people I've taken lessons with or been to clinics or workshops for, I really do think they are all well-meaning, sincere, knowledgeable about what they were doing, successful, very successful as players, way more successful as a player than I am. I'm not really, I'm an amateur player that loves playing. But almost universally, matter of fact, only one real name comes to my head, maybe sort of two, but most of them had that an insane ability going back to childhood. Like, they had exceptional ability on their instruments essentially from the get-go. And they haven't had to sit there and figure out what's going wrong and how to play this thing and how to do that. I mean, John Faddis was successful as a teenager, playing exceptionally well as a teenager. Wayne Bergeron, same thing. Maynard Ferguson, Adolf Herseth, like, there's Horst Fischer. You just name all these people, and they were just lights out, phenomenal players almost from the time they picked up the instrument. And there might be some amount of like their physiology was well adapted to it, but I actually don't think that's the case. I don't think they had like, the great lip or whatever. I think that's mostly BS. I think that just the way they tried to play the trumpet was just the most optimum way from the get-go, and it just worked and it had results, so they just kept doing it, and they were sort of not cognizant of it as a 11 or 12-year-old of their approach to pedagogy, because which of us were? None of us were. But the way they just naturally attempted to do it was the way that essentially worked well, and then from that, like, they just kept developing, and because of that, they don't have a lot of awareness of like their chops and the things that is actually going on here. They may have developed more awareness of some of the finer points, maybe like how they use their air, maybe certainly their mindset, maybe a few little points here and there. But I don't, if you've always played a certain way, if you've always played a way where your tongue is in contact with your lips during your entire playing process, it would feel so natural to you, you wouldn't understand that other people don't do that. And you would not even have awareness that you're doing it. Even though it's a new feeling to me and I've only been doing it for 6 months, I lose awareness of it all the time. All the time. And I'm hyper-focused on this, maybe obsessively focused on this. So I could totally see, and I'm not saying this is the case, so please don't tell you that I'm telling you that Wayne Bergeron doesn't know he plays. I'm not saying that at all. And to be 100% make sure we're totally clear, I am thoroughly enamored with Wayne as a person and as a player. I just think he's amazing. Like, a generous person, a kind person, one of my favorite players. So please don't take any of this as disparagement, because it is not. I have total reverence for his ability and his generosity and sharing that knowledge. But I think, Wayne, if he's played that way since he began, which he's shared the story of being in the 7th and 8th grade and playing double C's, he just will not know the same struggles that someone like myself has had, who's been trying to figure this out the whole time. And I think that's why sometimes when people are asked, like, if you ask these high note players, like, if they're using a tongue controlled embouchure or something like that, they may say no because they're unaware of it. But if you're actually able to diagnose it, I think you'd find, like, when you're playing an A above high C, and if you were to close your teeth, can you feel your tongue? I bet many of them go like, oh yeah, I could. I never realized that. Yeah, I can feel it. And this question's been asked many times before, and it's been found to be true. So I do think it's kind of universal. I just think most people don't know it. Now, I think you could be a classical player, or maybe a jazz player, where you're kind of a delicate player, and you might have good control of the upper register, but if you don't have that fatness up there and the loudness, you can't play up there fortissimo, and you can't play up there for hours. You might be able to do that and have your tongue further back in your mouth, but I'm not sure it's possible beyond that. At least if I haven't been able to figure it out as it has, haven't been able to figure it out yet. And I mentioned about how players being natural. The only two players that I can think of that are wildly successful, there's more. This isn't to be like an exhaustive list. These are just the two that I've talked about they've told me their stories of like trial and tribulation. Bobby Shue to some degree. He didn't start out as any kind of wonder kid in the beginning, but I think he kind of picked it up pretty quick. But Paul Stevens, I remember Paul played with Maynard and Nicholas Payton. He plays in one of the Army bands now. Phenomenal player, phenomenal lead player. But he shared the story with me how he, when he was in high school, like, he was, in his own words, he was a lousy trumpet player. He was not any good. And he heard the jazz band play, and he was always like kind of towards the last chair, and just was sort of like into playing the trumpet, but not a whole lot, kind of didn't care. Heard the jazz band, was like, oh, jazz band sounds fun, I want to do that. So he asked his band director, like, can I play in the jazz band? His director's like, no, like, this is for like better players only, and that's not you. And but Paul was adamant about wanting to, and he wanted to play, and so he ended up playing, I think, in the second jazz band in his high school. And then he just kept working and working, and specifically doing some exercises to strengthen his embouchure and some other stuff. And then I think by the next year, he was the lead player in the top ensemble, and he's kind of been on this trajectory ever since. So there's been a few people like him that have started from like kind of rough beginnings and figured it out. But many of these great players have always played great from the beginning. The way they picked the horn up from the beginning was the optimal way, and they've just been refining and tweaking and making subtle improvements over the years since then. And it's why you get these people that can just play astoundingly well from the time they're in their teens on forward. Now, Wayne Bergeron will tell you that 60-year-old Wayne Bergeron can bury 20-year-old Wayne Bergeron, because he's just more knowledgeable of his process and awareness and more efficient than he used to be. But that 20-year-old Wayne Bergeron was still playing double C's and playing in the Disney shows and playing professionally. Like, that 20-year-old Wayne Bergeron was still a hell of a player. So, anyway, that's just my thoughts about, as I share through some of this content. Maybe some of you might think, like, well, if this is so great, how come, the greats don't talk about this? It's because they're not aware of it. They're not aware of they're doing it. I really believe that to be the case. What do you think? Do you agree with me or disagree? Let me know in the comments.